bum 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 bum. But I am I.
Yeah. Okay, so we are actually the 5 lines from the bottom on page Ches. The line starts with Rosh Tevas, Beis Samach Yud, which stands for Sefer Yitzira. Somebody has not muted their phone, and we ask you to please do so. So we are now coming over to speak about a different phenomenon, different set of SS-spheres. These are SS-spheres on the internal presence. It's called SS-spheres Hagnuza is B'ma'atzilon. They remain treasured within the producer himself. We call it various things from the Zohar. Chakim v'lo b'chochma yidiyah. He is wise, but not with a knowable, identifiable quality of wisdom. And the Sefer Yitzira says SS spheres bli ma. 10 spheres bli ma. What means bli ma? Ma means without a what, without an identity. Bli mahuz dover, which means without a mahuz, without an identifiable presence. And yet, they are SS spheres. On the contrary, these are the supreme SS spheres. And as we said last night, that it isn't that they remain in their source. They did emanate, but they emanated in this manner not to become a mitzius, but to be treasured within the source itself. To clarify the Inyan and to elaborate on the Inyan, who aderech hayodua, it is similar to what is known, the Inyan chasodim mechusim v'chasodim megulim, concealed and covered over chasodim and revealed chasod. What is that, and how is this going to help us understand the Inyan? The chasodim megulim were the revealed, uncovered chasodim, hein bechinas ava v'yira v'hizgalus halev. They are the aspect of ava v'yira v'hizgalus halev, in that they are present in a manner that they actually are felt and recognized in the heart. Shehein b'chinas rash v'hispoilus. And then they have the chasodim ava v'yira b'hizgalus halev. They have their presence is manifest in a manner of rash v'hispoilus, with a pronounced presence in hispoilus and a great excitement. Rash means noise. They make noise. So, let us briefly focus in on this. Talking about Ahava V'yira. Now, Ahava V'yira are qualities. Ahava V'yira means Ahava is Hashem and Yira is Hashem. These are inherent qualities in the nefesh. because the nefesh recognizes Elokus and recognizes Elokus as an insider. This is the real chayes, this is the real reality, and the nefesh relates to it. And as a result of that, there is a union from Abba v'Yid. Now, when this Abba v'Yid is his galus halev, the question is like this: if the nefesh is one thing with Elokus, how can one be excited by loving himself? One doesn't get excited loving himself. Excitement comes from some kind of a bridge, some kind of a crossover, some kind of a discovery. Something that is the essence itself. It doesn't make you excited. The whole excitement doesn't fit. Excitement means that there's some kind of an external presence that makes you excited. If this Abba v'Yira is Galus Alevin in form that there is Rash v'his poems, that means that yes, indeed, in this Abba v'Yira there's an element of discovery, which means, being that this is the nefesh in the left, which means it's a nefesh be his slapshus in the goof, and the goof per se does not recognize Elokus. Therefore, the introduction of Elokus to the goof is really a discovery. Introduction of Elokus at the level of the goof, at the level of chayus of the goof, is a really a discovery. And there is, and that results in Abba v'Yira b'his galus alev, in experienced Abba v'Yira. Not an inherent Abba v'Yira as one appreciates his own truth, but as one appreciates something that is discovered, and he senses the special privilege of having it. Something that is part of you is no privilege. That's what you are, and therefore there is Rash v'his poems. And this is be his galus halev, because this is an Abba v'Yira that is the result of being without it and then discovering it. The love in the physical heart. Physical heart does have Abba v'Yira inherently.
So it's a discovery of something that's inherent, but yet it's still something that's new.
The fact that it's inherent is totally oblivious to it. You completely, because now you're thinking from the goof perspective. The way the nefesh is mislavish in the goof, and there is no inherent Abba v'Yira. On the contrary, there is the goof that encompasses the nefesh. And the chayus ha-nefesh that is sensed at that level is really what's called the ha'oras ha-nefesh, as we discussed many times. This is the aspect of the nefesh that can relate to goof and give chayus to the goof, bring the lifeless goof to life. So that is really a stripped down chayus. And if there is an element of Abba v'Yira therein, which means you recognize the truth of this chayus, that becomes very exciting. It's overwhelming, almost. Rash v'his poems. And then there is Bechinas chasodim mechusim. Then there is chasodim mechusim, covered over chasodim, Hein ha'aba v'yira shebipnimius halev b'chashoy. This is the Abba v'yira that is internal to the heart. And they speak b'chashoy quietly. Why do they speak quietly? She'einon b'bchinas mitziyus. This Abba v'yira do not acquire the element of mitziyus, of a presence. What is this b'pnimius halev? It's also in the heart. What is b'pnimius halev? Within the chayas hanefesh in the goof, and we said the chayas hanefesh in the goof, as it's manifest in the goof, it's only ha'oras hachayas, which means only the chayas as it is able to affect the goof, and the goof should be able to respond to be affected by it. Like we're saying in the muscle of light, of sunlight, the light that makes you able to see the physical object. This is not pure light. This is not light from its own perspective. This is a functional light. But the sight of the sun is not a functional light, it's an essential light. So this is similar in the Chayes HaNefesh. In Chayes HaNefesh, there is the functional element that establishes in the goof. And then there is Ahava V'yira, recognition of Elokus. But it's recognition of Elokus, B'his Galus Alev, which means B'his Galus Alev, that the goof can relate to it. And that can be spoilers, Rash. Then there is that same Chayes HaNefesh, B'hislapius in the goof, but it is the way the Chayes is unto itself. In the goof, the essence of the Chayes itself. This essence of the Chayes as it is in the goof, there is also Abba V'yira there. On the contrary, that is where Abba V'yira are inherently present, but there it doesn't make any noise. Because there it relates to the Chayes itself, not to the way the goof recognizes the Chayes, but the way the Chayes is true in and of itself.
Is Ava and Mira in the goof, but it's as it's
One second. To relate to this union a little bit closer, we have to understand this. We said that just like I'll go over to the motion of the sunlight, because it's much more tangible over there. In the case of the sunlight, so we said that the light itself is sourced in the sun, which is Etzem Mehiri. Etzem Mehiri means that it is light through and through. It is not a functional light. It's not a light that's created physically. It's just a concept of light itself. And then that light comes out and is being produced on a physical level to the extent that it actually can illuminate a physical object, that you can see the physical object. And as we said, that at that level, it's not really light, it's just an energy that is deflected from the physical object. But nevertheless, even there, the element of light itself remains with it. In what sense? As we point out, that even there is the sense that you see the object and you relate to the object without ever coming in contact with the object, which is really a sense of light, of the element of light per se, an essential light. To see the truth without having to examine it physically, because it's true. So it exposes you to an element of a true presence. So even at the most reduced and physical level, it carries the element of what light stands for. The same is true. We have to translate it in the nefesh. The nefesh is mechaya the guf, and it's mislabish in the guf, and the life of the guf is a physical life. But life per se, the sense of life remains a nefesh element, remains a miracle, remains something that you cannot really explain what it is. Even though it is reduced completely to the point where it becomes one with the physical element. And we say, for example, that there are all kinds of there's a whole nervous system that carries messages from the brain to the foot. It's almost like the brain is commanding the foot to walk and so forth. It's like a worldly type of communication of an action, but it's not true. Because at the same time, there is this element that the foot responds to the brain instantaneously, and as Chassidus explains, that there is a Nehar that encompasses the entire person equally. So the real chayus, even at the physical level, is really a neshama aspect. It's not. It's a neshama through the guf, but it remains a ruch nizik inyan and a neshama element. And as we pointed out several times in the past, that the guf can sense. Normally, if it were just a physical experience, then the guf would sense only that which, what's called, disturbs the guf, which rubs against it. But the guf can sense something that doesn't disturb it. That's very smooth and very pure, like silk. That sense is like the physical, that the neshama is lavish in the physical. It's like a neshama experience, because there is no disturbance of the guf, and yet the guf senses it. Why? Because the guf has life in it, and it senses it through its life element.
This is to explain. This is to explain the level of the chayes the way it is in its source. It's in the goof, but it's not.
No, the way it's in the goof.
Yeah.
This is the pshat the chasodim habachusim.
Okay.
It is in the goof. It's slapshus in the goof, but it remains nefesh. To give us a coarse type of illustration, if I hit my hand hurts. That's maguli.
Physical.
That's physical, and it screams, "Hey, it hurts me." When you feel something that does not affect the goof physically at all, and it is just a sense that you have, this is like it is quiet, and you can't even describe what it is that you feel, because this relates to the chayus element exclusively. Because when it hurts, it's also a chayus. If the goof was not alive, it wouldn't feel the pain.
And the avayira, that's his galus.
That's avayira beis galus, right?
Yeah. How does that become? It changes from what it is in its source. It becomes on the level of
goof.
Of goof.
As I said, the avayira beis galus in Shvat, because it senses the contrast. It says it doesn't have avay, and it is discovery of avay, discovery of elokus, discovery of life. That's why there is Rash. This is avayira hamgulim, avayira that actually affects the goof, and the other level of the goof. And then there is avayira, the way they are bepnimiyus halev. So it's also in the heart. So pnimiyus halev, Because there is the chayus itself. Like we said, the chayus itself, not as it is affecting the goof, but as it is present in the goof. And that comes b'chashoy, that stays quietly, because it is within its own realm. Because there's no mitzius of this Ava. It is part and parcel of the Chayes HaNefesh. V'hein bechinas eitz hachayim ve'eitz hadas. These two levels, these two elements, are the bechina that is present in the world. That's called eitz hachayim ve'eitz hadas. What is eitz hadas? Eitz hadas means das is also a reflection of nefesh. And you cannot have das unless if you don't have the insight of the nefesh. But by the time it comes down into das, it has been transformed, and it has gone through a process where you become aware of it. That's das. Eitz hachayim is the way this inyan is in the chayas itself. It's not the chayas itself. Okay. Okay, so far so good. Omnom hamavur kan beinyan es esfiras de ma uban. However, this which we are discussing over here regarding es esfiras of ma and es esfiras of ban yesh leimar, that can be further pointed to and explained that and related to Shazeo Bechinas Chitzonius Hakav Upnimius Hakav. That this is the inner from Chitzonius Hakav Upnimius Hakav. Okay. What is this different?
It's a different view?
It's on a different level, right? When we said before, Chasodim am Chusha, Chasodim am Gulim, Pnim is Alev and Chitzon is Alev, we are talking about his lapshus, the nefesh in the heart. We're not talking about the oil itself, the oil and nefesh itself. We're talking about the way this oil manifests in his lapshus in the goof.
So is this different than the beer that the spheres, the Mar, are the spheres of Mechusim and the spheres of...
Right. Mechusim, or Begulim, Chasodim, Mechusim, Begulim refers to the Pnimis Aleph and Chitzonius Aleph. That's a Chayes HaNefesh being slapshus.
So even before that, so spheres like Nuzois, spheres of...
Oh, so the spheres like Nuzois, and sphere is so now he's saying that within the oil hakab itself, not the slapshus and keli. In the oil hakab itself, there is chitzenius hakab and pnimis hakab. This inyan of pnimis alav mechus and chitzenius alav mechusim and gulim, that is an introduction to the inyan, and more on more tangible and more identifiable level, but the truth of this inyan is actually in the kav itself. The shleimar that in fact there is a deeper inyan in this inyan. Shezel bechinas chitzonius hakav or pnimius hakav. In the kav itself, there's chitzonius and pnimius, and that is not the inyan of islapshus in the gu, the lev, and islapshus in the lev. They understood pnimius and chitzonius because there is the chitzonius is how the oira nefesh affects the physical heart, and pnimius is how the nefesh is present in the physical heart, as we explained. But pnimius hakav, chitzonius hakav, he's talking about within the oil itself.
Right, okay. But before we said that the spheres to bond, the chilas or our netzal is engaged.
That's what the Rebbe says now.
Oh, this is going back.
Yeah, that's right. Ham Omer Hamavur Khan. This was like a good moshel, so to speak. But Hamavur Khan, what we have been talking about over here, is in different level. Ban Ba is within the oil itself. As we said, the Ois Spheres have genuzes b'ma'at tzilon. So, the mizeh yesh b'es spheres. As a result of that, the fact that there is these two aspects in the cup, pnimis and chitzonius, as a result of that, mizeh yesh b'es spheres b'chinas chitzoniuson or b'chinas pnimiuson. This is why in Esespheres there is the Bechina of the Esesphere, in the Esespheres, the Chitzenius of the Esespheres, Chitzenius son, their Chitzenius, or Bechinas Pnimius son, and their Pnimius. In other words, we're talking about the same Esespheres. But within the Esespheres themselves, there is a Chitzenius and there is a Pnimius. It's the same as we say, Pnimius Akav and Chitzenius Akav. So now we have to interrupt. We'll pick it up in Mitzvah on Sunday. Okay, thank you.
For bringing this Shabbos sponsored by Daniel Galus for his birthday at Beis Levi Yitzchak. I presume that Baruch is going to teach this Shabbos meeting.
Okay, have a good day.
See what he
Right,
says.
Paltiel? So before we said there are two different sets of spheres. One is rooted in the Matzil, as the spheres like Muzos, and one is
One is treasured within the matter. Everything is within the matter. One, as a spheres hagnuses. Did you hear the shir last night? He explained that. As a spheres hagnuses does not mean that they were not created. They're netzel, but they're netzel not bechinas given. They're netzel to remain within the treasure, within the etzem itself.
So, and then the other set of spheres is not treasured in the Matzil, is from the Kilos or Netzal. And now we're saying that, so these two sets of spheres are really two aspects of spheres.
Of spheres.
The two the spheres of Ma and spheres of Brahma, those are still two distinct types of spheres?
There's the Pnimis and Chitzonius are two distinct elements. And they have to be understood this thing, but they're all coming from the same source essentially. There's one way that is natural, another way that is natural. So, we shall see, Mr. Shem.
Shabbos, Shabbos already.
Huh?
It's already Shabbos.
It's already Shabbos. Right. Shabbos Shira, Shabbos Aman.
Don't forget some kasha.
Some Kasha.
Boom.